هو رائد أعمال ومحاضر محترف ومؤلف كتب عديدة في مجال المبيعات. اسمه دوغلاس كروجر وهو من جنوب إفريقيا. يعمل دوغلاس كروجر بمحاضراته الرائعة على تغيير عقلية الناس السلبية التي تم توارثها عبر أجيال ودفعهم نحو الاستقلالية والاعتماد على أنفسهم. يمتلك في رصيده 6 مؤلفات عبارة عن كتب قيمة في مجال الاستثمار، أبرزها امتلك صناعتك الذي حقق مبيعات كبيرة عام 2014. فاز بجوائز عديدة، آخرها أفضل متحدث لسنة 2016. عمل كخبير مالي لعدة شركات كبرى مثل BMW، ليبرتي وHP. نتمنى أن تكون هذه المحاضرة مفيدة لكم وأن تنال إعجابكم. ابقوا معنا.
The only information that I put on Facebook was, there has been an accident between a Golf and a Ferrari. That's it. We don't know who was wrong. We don't know if it was the Golf driver who made the mistake. We don't know if a dog didn't run across the road and caused this thing. But what was interesting is it showed up a belief system that most of us don't even know we have. It's a bias against the rich. Now, in a room like this, we are all studying and working toward building careers, building futures, becoming high net worth individuals. Let me ask you a question. Do you reckon you can become a high net worth individual at the same time as hating wealthy people? It's a self-limiting belief and it actually gets in the way. But what's fascinating is that the kind of thinking that is handed down to us from generation to generation is invisible. And I'm not the only person who's actually seen this in motion. Anybody here watch Top Gear? Yes, yeah, absolutely. Jeremy Clarkson says, in the United States, you watch a person drive by in a Bentley, and the reaction is, one day I'll be in one of those. And he says it's different in Britain. He says in Britain, you watch a guy drive past in a Bentley and you say, one day I'll have him out of that. That's a bit more sinister, isn't it? A little bit darker. And it's really interesting because particularly in South Africa, we have spent decades trying to unravel a belief system about racism that's been handed down from generation to generation. But we are not aware of other beliefs that are handed down to us, particularly beliefs about wealthy people. And here we all are chasing these goals and chasing these lives while at the same time feeling uncomfortable about talking about money. Let's take a look at how this thinking is created, how it's generated, how it's handed down from generation to generation, and how it can stop you from achieving your goals. The point is to unravel it, get it out of our minds, excise it, be rid of it, be free of it, so that we can actually chase the goals that we have in life and become all God intended us to be. In my family, if you go back 2 generations to my grandmother, she used to work at an English manor house in Manchester. Has anyone here ever watched the show on TV, quite a mature show called Downton Abbey? The basic idea is you've got 2 sets of people. You've got the higher class folks who own this abbey. They're kind of semi-royalty in the United Kingdom. Then you've got the people downstairs who run everything. They do the cooking, they do the sweeping, the cleaning. It's the staff. My grandmother was part of the manor house, but she was not the people upstairs. She was the people downstairs. She was one of the maidservants who helped to keep this manor house clean. And if you had to see pictures of the way that they dressed at the time, it was the full old-style regalia. She had the little apron and the little maid's outfit and the little feather duster. This was a woman who worked incredibly hard from dusk till dawn. This was a woman whose back was sore more often than not. This was a woman who, if you ever met her and put your hands on her hands, you'd find nothing but calluses. And most importantly, this was a woman who had no voice in the face of authority. Because the thinking back then, for both the lower classes and for women, was keep quiet, don't make waves, be a cog in the system. We don't want to know that you exist. We just want to see that your job gets done. And this is the kind of thinking that is then handed down from generation to generation. And what's interesting is that when my dad came along, my grandmother was looking for the best advice she could possibly give to him about work and wealth and how to make your way in the world. She went rummaging around in her mind and she came up with this gem, and it was the advice she gave to my dad. She said, "My son, get a trade. That way you will never starve to death." Did she say, so that you can become all God intends you to be? Is it so that you can let your light shine, so that you can become wealthy, so that you can achieve goals? No, it's so that you never starve to death. The thinking comes from a place of desperation. And that's the thinking that's handed down generation to generation. And the weird part is, it's completely invisible to us. We hear this advice and we think it's right and we think it's normal. Now, I'm not picking on my grandmother. She was doing the best she could with the ideas that she had, without perhaps knowing how much damage it can do to future generations. Take a look at the building you see behind me there. That is an Industrial Revolution era factory. It's about 100, maybe 120 years ago. What other building that we have today looks very similar to that factory? Schools, yeah? Schools, and here's an interesting one, are run according to the Industrial Revolution age of thinking. Picture this for a second. You drop your kids off at school, or you as a child are dropped off at school, and you line up in neat lines, and the foreman, the teacher, blows the whistle or rings the bell, and in your neat lines you go to your workstation and you sit down. You sit down at your little workstation and you work for a number of hours. And then the foreman, the teacher, blows the whistle, rings the bell, and you take out your little lunchbox and you can have some food. Then the whistle goes again, you go back into your workstation, you sit down. It is run according to an Industrial Revolution era factory. Why? Because we are training human beings to be cogs in a system. And we're still doing it. Okay? Now, I'm not picking on schools here. The point is not to say that schools are badly run. The point is just to say we have thinking that is invisible to us. We are trained to thought, and we are culturalized to act in certain ways that no longer make sense in the modern economy. The old world thinking says, become a cog in a system, fit in, don't make waves, and if you're a perfect cog, you'll get your little bit of money at the end of the day and you can go home. That thinking will keep you poor. I like to call that style of thinking the wheelbarrow way. It basically goes like this. It's like the parents get hold of their child, the young son, the young daughter, and they say, "My son, my daughter, you are young and strong. You must go out into the world and earn coins. Here's how you do it. Pick up your wheelbarrow, load it full of bricks, and for every hour that you push your wheelbarrow, you will get 1 coin. If you want a second coin, you have to push your wheelbarrow for a second hour." Now, we think like that. We go, the only way to earn coins is to work for a set number of hours, so let me go and get a job and be dependent on a boss. Now, you work your set number of hours every day, you push your wheelbarrow for your set number of hours, and a horrible thing starts to happen. You start to realize that you can't quite afford the car. You're not quite breaking even with the kids and their education and the debit orders and the bonds and so on. So what do? You go back to the thinking that was handed down to you. And you say, if I'm not getting enough coins, what do I have to do? I have to push a second wheelbarrow in the evenings to get more coins. That kind of thinking keeps families in generational cycles of poverty. If you take nothing else away from today, this is the one principle that is the most important. Do not tie your earning to the number of hours you work. You've got to separate those two. The wealthy person's epiphany, the way of breaking out of this idea is this. Dump the bricks in your wheelbarrow. Get rid of them. Load your wheelbarrow up with gold. In other words, for every hour that you push that wheelbarrow, you need to raise the value of your work. Earn more coins per hour, not work more hours in order to get more coins.